One. Hi everyone, welcome to the 5 Yard Pass channel where we talk everything about United and the fixtures coming up. So up next we have the game against I've just forgotten, Sham. Who are we playing next game?
Southampton.
Southampton, yeah, thanks. So we're here to preview the Southampton game. So I am Sudi and this is Sham, and hope you enjoy this episode. So Sham, what are your thoughts on the last game against I've had a busy weekend, Sham. My memory with the election and birthdays and weddings.
You got a national election. Your brothers got married. Family birthday.
First birthday. Lots of family.
Yeah, I've just, a lot of things going on, man.
3-0 against
Villa.
That's right. Do you want to give us some thoughts on that game?
Yeah, thought it was another quite polished performance. I think it shows how strong our first 11 is. There are need to bring in additional players, I think, which we can touch upon later. But I think the guys that played the game played really well, got the result that we needed, and other teams have been dropping points and we have not. So we're on the precipice of the top four, and we will go top four should we beat Villa.
Yeah. What did you think of
Sorry, Southampton.
yeah, you as well. What did you think of any individual stand? I thought there was a bit of drop in pace until the goal. I thought Matic was a bit out of sorts, but I think that's go on. Sorry.
The game did dawdle a bit, I think, until Fernandes got that goal. United have been killing teams off fairly quickly. You can look at Sheffield United's game in particular. They've been scoring goals early on in games, which can create that "oh god, here we go again" type theory.
Yeah, go on, keep going. Yeah.
I thought Fernandes' goal, I'm pretty sure that wasn't a penalty. I can see why it was given, but I don't think it should have been. But hey, when your team does well,
I actually think it seemed like he fouled. I think it was Mings. It was. I think he actually had a stamp on him. That's potentially yellow for me, but I think I sent you a text straight after. It was like United are getting penalties that are not. They're winning games in ways they shouldn't be. I think the old United's back, but you got to whisper it.
There was a team in basketball here in Perth. There's a team called the Wildcats, and they're quite in the national basketball competition. They're like the team that's won the most championships. And someone once called them the LA Police because they find a different way to beat you every weekend.
Yeah, man. I think it was a good it's been 16 games since the last loss, and I know the last loss was Liverpool. But I think it's a good feeling. It's a feeling in a feeling itself that it doesn't feel good to win anymore. As in, it doesn't feel, oh shit, we've won the next game. It's like, yeah, we know. I said this last week as well.
It's an expectation rather than a hope.
Doing the business. The game. I think beating Chelsea on Monday will be sweet, but we'll talk about the next game. So we have Southampton. They're in a bit of a form at the minute. They just come off beating City as well. What do you think of, just generally, what are your thoughts on the game coming up in a few hours?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Southampton, because they do have the ability to score. Ings has had a really good season. They are a team that likes to press. So it's almost as if, I have a feeling against United, they'll probably sit deep like everyone seems to do nowadays against United. But once United get the ball into the half, I think there's going to be some pretty heavy pressing, some counter-attacking. So it will be interesting to see some of the players and how they handle that type of pressure, particularly with the load that the guys are going through at the moment, just making sure that they've got nothing in their legs.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see many changes from Friday. I feel that way, but I think you'll see some changes on this Friday coming up against
Palace. Yeah,
against Palace.
I think that Palace have been a bit shocking since the restart, to be honest.
Yeah,
they've fallen about 4 spots on the table or something. Like, they've not done well at all.
Yeah.
If they're not in any relegation danger, but you would be worried if you're a Palace fan how you're finishing the season. So that's probably where you'll see more changes. There might be 1 or 2, I think.
I actually want to talk about
Ollie seems a bit relentless. It was how he was as a player as well.
Yeah,
he looks disingenuous at times, but
he has that Fergie kind of deceit. I wouldn't say deceit, but that, like, in a sense, a bit of mind games, a bit of deceit in there. A bit of smoke and mirrors. It's literally like watching Fergie talk with a Norwegian accent. I genuinely feel that way. He's just not.
It's a bit easier to understand than a Glaswegian accent.
Oh yeah, with all the cigars and whiskeys in his throat. I wanted to actually talk about Pogba, and I think Pogba at the minute is like an Audi or like a Ferrari, if you will, cruising in third gear, which is still faster than most cars on the road. That's the way I kind of describe him. And that's what you want Pogba to play at most of the season. Because if you watch the World Cup, for example, or when he was at Juventus until the Champions League final when they lost to Madrid, he cruises in third, maybe fourth gear, and you can see him pick it up for a big game because he's cruising for most of the season.
Pogba was brought in to be Roy Keane, and as we said before, he was never gonna be that. The player that he reminds me the most of, and just give me a second here, he reminds me of Steve Gerrard. He's got that ability to play at a high level consistently and then lift in big moments. Steve Gerrard was also always famous, FA Cup final of 7, Istanbul, all of that.
Yeah.
Pogba reminds me of that type of player. But with Gerrard, he would play at that high level constantly and occasionally go up in those big moments.
Yeah.
Whereas Pogba at times at average level has fallen. Yeah. He's not had so many opportunities to play big moments, and he's had moments where he's either tried too hard because of the people around him or was just sort of mentally given up slightly because of the people around him.
Yeah.
But he reminds me of that type of player, and he's getting that consistent, like you said, playing at a consistent level, which is better than most people. And you feel like he's got something in him to lift in big moments. Like almost like watching a Federer or Messi. Like, you know that they're playing really well, but just at certain times they just flick the switch.
And then, like when Federer goes from round 3 to 4 to quarterfinals, and suddenly you're seeing where was this in round 2? Because he just picked it up against Novak or Nadal, and this is like 06 to 08 Federer. Yeah,
I want to make it clear. I'm not saying Pogba's Messi, but they have an ability to lift suddenly out of nowhere and just play at an unbelievable level.
Well, yeah,
Pogba seems to have that in him.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but those guys have always been incredibly consistent as well.
Yeah,
which Pogba, it's that lower end that Pogba's sort of struggled with, but now he feels he's got support with Matic, support with Fernandes, guys who'll score goals. Yeah. Everyone's having a crack at De Gea in the defense, but they've conceded 6 goals in 16 games or something like that.
30,
which is football manager-esque,
Third best in the league. Behind City and Liverpool. To change gears a little bit, I wanted to talk about Van der Vaart's comments about Harry Maguire. Very scathing. I thought it was a bit much, but my opinion on it, my take on it before you say yours is, I think Dutch people in general are quite honest. For one, when I say honest, they say exactly what they say quite literally, and I think you could argue that it's taken quite literally from Dutch. Secondly, they are very technically skilled players. They just are. The Dutch, I remember there's a story about McLaren going over to FC Twente and being basically tactically outclassed by his academy players, like asking him questions and he had no idea what was going on. But I think probably a bit out of order. I think Maguire's the leader of men. I think he's made too many mistakes in the first season as a captain, but overall, I'd give his season a 6.5, 7. Goals conceded, generally getting the steady the ship. He'll never be a Rio. I'd like him to be, but I don't think he will be. I think he's got to have someone with a pace beside him. If Bailly becomes good in some sense, he could be that guy. But what do you think about the comments?
Yeah, it surprised me. I didn't hear it the first time because it doesn't seem like it's the first time he's had a crack.
It's not. He said something about it last year at the Nations League as well.
Yeah, I was looking it up and I found stuff that he said last year as well. My favorite story about Dutch people is I work in banking, as you know. I have a Dutch colleague, and the Dutch colleague was auditing my part of the bank. So we'd done the audit, it was all fine, and then we're just having that sort of lighthearted chit-chat at the end, and someone else I was working with said to her, "Oh, I've heard a lot of nice things about Holland. It'd be nice to visit one day." And the Dutch colleague goes, "Oh, don't bother." And we're all a bit shocked. We went, "What? Holland is nice, but there are other nicer places." It was like the most Dutch thing, like just raw honesty, you know, this is how I feel, and there's nothing, it's just purely objectively, there's probably nicer places you can go.
Yeah.
But, the thing is, I mean, Maguire, because of that price tag, he's been held up to the Van Dijk, Ferdinand, almost John Terry, Tony Adams type level.
Yeah.
And he's not at that level at the moment. It's his first season as a big money signing at a big club, and he's got the armband, and he's done well considering those things. Has he played at the level of a Van Dijk or Ferdinand? No, he hasn't. He's had a good season. I think his best days are in front of him. But yeah, I get I think Van der Vaart's trying to make the point that he's not. That we're sort of anointing a world class player, where he's probably not a world class player, and I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I think that I think he's doing well enough, and he's doing good. Is he doing brilliant? No, he's not. Which is similar to what you were saying, so they're sort of 6.5, 7 out of 10, type of thing. But I think he will get better next season, and there is a need for him to continually get better because the team, being the captain, and also being, I think he's still the only player who's played every minute since the lockdown has ceased, since we started playing again. So he's an important cog. If United are going to win the title, he has to play at a higher level, or they bring in a better player. That's the reality.
Actually, Lindelof hasn't, but he came in for the Norwich game, if I'm not wrong. But yeah, you are right. I think he's the only guy. Yeah. No, I agree. I think he was a bit harsh with this concept. It's all a bit of fun though for him. Probably it's all a bit of fun to look at.
He was always a bit of a controversial player, wasn't he? He's one of those types of players who you could
he was in that
imagine him saying that.
He was in that class of Dutch players that just never. I mean, they did well. I mean, obviously they got to the final of the 2010, but in the same way of England, they were never consistently good over like a good 8 years. He was a freak of a player though. Like had absolute freakish moments.
That back heel he scored it with. Was it with Ajax?
Yeah, the famous back heel, almost like a Di Canio type of player. Even actually Snyder came out a few weeks ago saying the vodka was his best friend at Madrid. They just never lived up to what they could have been. But I tell you, man, like Football Manager, Van der Vaart was one of my first. I can tell you that now. He's an unbelievable player. Just strange comments to make, and I think it comes down to him probably having high standards and just being Dutch and just the way they speak. Quite literal. I'm excited for the game, man. Talking about Southampton, I think it's going to be very low scoring, contrary to what I usually say. I don't think you're going to get another even 2-0. I think you'll be lucky to get a second.
They're not going to extend that record, you think?
I don't think. I was very. I know if you go back, I was quite optimistic compared to you. I was saying it's going to be hammering every time, and I kind of got pretty close to the scores. I think it's going to be very tight, just because the other teams didn't have that as much of a threat to score compared to Ings. And I think Ings can get at the end of almost anything. 18 goals is solid, man. If you think about, Jamie Vardy's in 22. Any 18 goals in any year for that matter is solid. So I think it could be a flood of goals later on, but I think most of the game will be about being a bit cautious, getting a bit of. Also with Chelsea having lost unbelievably 3-0 against a very shaky post-COVID Sheffield. I think United just going to try and just get the win, get those 3 points, finally move into solidifying fourth place, which will happen.
It'll be interesting to see. It's probably the first game where, this is the first game they've got an ability to get into that Champions League position for a long time.
Yeah.
So does that expectation affect the result, or do they just go out there and absolutely thump Southampton? And I think, like you said, I think there is an ability for it to create a slight tension for the players.
Yeah, absolutely.
I get the feeling you say like the game might open up late, but it might be quite what's the word? Yeah, it might be quite tense early doors. I think
tense for United, not for Southampton. I mean, they're in a bit of a rubber state. I don't even think they can even sniff the Europa. Let me just have a look here. I could be wrong actually, because they did since they lost that 9-0. They've been reasonably.
Oh, they're about 10 points behind Sheffield United, so they're 14 points behind Man United.
They're not gonna.
So no.
Yeah, so they're in a bit of a. They've got the 42 points for relegation, so I think a bit of nothing to lose, really. You'll see a very
long trip for them. They travel the whole length of the country to get there. Yeah. No one's going to be watching. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
They'll be loose, They'll be willing to fight. They're willing to attack. I mean, so I think it'll be a tough game. I think United will take it 2-1. I think Ings or someone of that quality will get the goal. But overall, a win. What about yourself?
Yeah, I think they'll win. I do get that feeling they might just nick it, sort of a 2-1 nick. Yeah. Sometimes United have been scoring goals for fun. That doesn't necessarily happen every single game, and this might be that game where it's not quite falling their way. And I mean, Southampton, due credit, they beat Man City. It's tough. Yeah. And they played well. They didn't fluke that. They played well.
What I was actually people have said this, and I completely agree. Is that I'm really surprised City doesn't have that record. I'm not one for records. I think just in general, these Liverpool putting these records up, and City doing it last year, I couldn't give a shit about them. End of the day, man, like you know, it's all about the trophies at the end of the day. If you want to talk about records like Spain, I saw one today, was like Spain's the only team to win a World Cup with all their scorers from the same club back in 2010. It's like, that's great, but like, you won the World Cup, man. Like, why are you deriving these records out of nothing?
You go there to win the World Cup, not set records, right?
Or if you see a post Bruno table or a post Christmas table, United's on top, like, that's great, man. Like, but where was that at the start of the season?
Those were the sort of things when United were winning trophies, and other clubs would say, "Oh, but since October we were the best team."
Yeah, absolutely.
But since August we were the best team.
Absolutely, United did it when it matters. I mean, 12 points back in '97. Sorry, 96, 97 when they overtook Newcastle. Am I right? Am I getting the year? I was in 95, 96. Like, you can go like, oh, until Christmas Newcastle were on top. But I don't subscribe to all of that. I see them as just trends. Kind of these trends that show that things are coming back to winning ways. That's all I see.
It's interesting interesting in sports in general. We seem to be a bit more, maybe because there's this emphasis around statistics. We try and add extra meaning to them by records, and I don't know if that flows into the play so much. Like you look at the NBA, for example. I don't know if you follow the NBA, but someone like Russell Westbrook averages a triple double for 3 seasons. But you wonder, and it's just this question mark that's there. Is he kind of playing for the record, or is it just a result of the way that he plays?
Yeah.
And in competition, when players get contracts and wages, and people pull out a sheet of paper and say you averaged this and you did this. So does that affect the way that they play? And it would be a worry if it was. With Marcus Rashford, for example, he seems to have. We talked a bit about him, seems slightly off the pace, but it's almost as if with Martial and Greenwood going great guns. That he's kind of turned into, and especially with the way Shaw runs around him now, he's kind of turning into a creator of sorts. And that might just be because he doesn't feel like he can shoot, but it might just be a new role, or he's just reading of the game.
Actually, I did think of that the other day. Was the way Shaw's overlapping is, if that's kind of the byline, he's doing these inverted full. So he's doing kind of both these inverted and
underlaps and overlaps.
Underlaps, you say, yeah. I think he's quite interesting. Like I got to give it to Shaw, man. Like I never really thought he had the IQ of the game the way like like an Ashley Cole had. I mean, no, it's not to say. I mean, Ashley Cole, Dennis Owens, they're the echelon of left backs in the Premier League.
Yeah, Cole's the best left back.
In Premier League. I'm just saying,
with Irvin. Yeah,
you can get versions of Cole, and I just never thought he was there. But it's interesting to see, man. He's only 24 as well. He's got 6, 7, 8 years of top level football. I just think it's nice to see that he can do that. He can make those more intelligent runs, because kind of unlike Wan-Bissaka, he doesn't have that pure athletic ability that Wan-Bissaka has to get around people, the strength. So he uses I think you said it. You told me this many years ago. It's like if you don't have pace, if you don't have pace in the legs, you got to have pace in the brain, the speed in the brain. I think he's getting there. I like his link up with Rashford, and I agree with you there when you say like Rashford's become he's become the sort of player who gets the ball, he can put his foot on the ball and think very much like a cultured European player, where you can think about what you want to do next instead of that fast pace. He can do both, obviously. It's good. Yeah. I quite like that. I had another thought. The other thing I want to say.
I was just going to say with Shaw, sorry, just before you jump onto the thought.
Yeah.
He's been injured a lot, but people forget we paid £30 million for an 18-year-old to bring him to the club. Like, there's something there.
Yeah.
And if he gets regular games, maybe we'll just see it.
Yeah. The other thing I want to say was just coming back to the records as well. When you talk about like Greenwood, Rashford, and Martial, again, it sounds like I'm not a United fan. I'm a massive United fan. I'm a huge fan, but I'm just saying these 51 goals and all these assists. It's a great point. But if you look at Mane, for example, I couldn't care less how many goals he's got, but his goals alone have put 18 points on the board for City.
Heavy goals.
Sorry?
Heavy goals, like important goals.
Yeah, important goals. Like, let's look at the stat. I don't know the stats myself here, but I can tell you, Rashford and Martial's goal, put Greenwood aside, has not put 18 points to the board for United. Have they performed when it's needed? Like, and United's got 13 penalties on top of that. It's all well and good, but I just don't subscribe to statistics is my point. The only statistic is, are you scoring more goals than the other team? That's it. That's all that really matters to me,
Yeah. They can help read the game, but they don't paint the entire picture. There are things that statistics
snapshot, exactly. Yeah. Absolutely.
20 years ago, it was kind of like Edgar David said, like, we just measure goals and cards. If you don't score
goals and
goals,
what,
then we just measure goals and assists and yellow cards. Like, this is Edgar Davids.
Yeah.
He said, like, if you don't score goals or get assists, people say you're a rubbish footballer. And
Yeah.
statistics have evolved a lot from that, but it's not completely evolved.
Yeah.
It's not going to tell the whole story.
The game hasn't changed. You know, you add a sprinkle of VAR, a sprinkle of the offside rules, but the game hasn't changed. You know, fundamentally. Yeah. If you talk about NBA as well, like things have systemically changed the NBA, like the way the shot clock has changed, for example. So the urgency to do things, but once again, in football it hasn't. So yeah, I don't want to harp on about the stats too much. I'm just not a fan of it. I think it's a way for like clubs not winning trophies to feel better about themselves. And United at the moment, it's nice to look at for me. It's nice to see all 51 goals, but like, where's the trophy, man? Like, I don't expect it. I don't think it's a God-given right, but that's the only thing. Top players, like the first 15 players that we have, the best 15 that we have, can very capable of winning. To branch off to that.
When you're a kid playing in the street, sorry, I'm jumping in again. When you're a kid playing in the street, you don't play to score 15 goals in the season. You play to win trophies.
Yeah,
you play to score the 90th minute winner against your team's hated rivals. That's why you play.
Exactly.
And we forget that sometimes.
Just last thing before we finish off. Have you seen the UEFA Cup? Sorry, the UEFA Cup draw yet?
I saw it on a high level. I've not paid deliberately a lot of attention to it because I'm so excited about the league season and I want that to finish. And because it's separate, put my attention to it later.
Well, I mean, basically we have Copenhagen, which, I mean, we have Lask, and then we have potentially Copenhagen or Istanbul, and so Copenhagen, Istanbul potentially in the next round, and then Shakhtar, Wolfsburg, Frankfurt, Basel play in the other bracket, so we could play one of them for the semis. And looking at the other legs, it seems like we will probably play Inter, Sevilla, or Roma. So it could potentially a tough final, but again, potentially a soft journey there, which would help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the nature of it. It'll be interesting to see if they come up against Inter. It'll be Lukaku on the field, obviously, and Sanchez on the bench or in the stands. But
and Ashley Young, Ashley Young as well.
And Ashley Young, yes.
Yeah.
So,
and if you come up against Roma, you got Smalling as well. Michael Smalling, as Van Gaal says. Inter, Roma. I think playing these teams it's going to be like, has to be second nature again to play in the Champions League next year, because United are going to be probably in the third pot next year, definitely the second pot. So it's going to be tough opponents all around. So I'm excited for the Europa League games coming up. And last thing, lineup prediction for tonight.
Prediction. It's hard with Ole. I'm going to say the same lineup. I'm actually expecting a couple of changes. I think Matic might get that rest because I think they won't want to push him too hard. Maybe one of the front three gets a break for James, but we've been saying it a bit, haven't we? Oh, there'll be this change and that change, and there just doesn't end up being any changes. So I'm thinking that we know the vulnerable spots, but I just think it's going to be the same 11, and I think Crystal Palace is where we'll make some changes.
I go a bit different with you. I think I'm pretty certain James is coming in for Greenwood. I just think he's good for what that kind of Southampton play, that rock and roll stars. He's going to be working hard. Greenwood goes missing for most of the game, and it's not a criticism at all. It's just the way he plays. But he takes 2 shots and he scores 2 goals. He's world class.
One thing I wanted to say about Greenwood, watch his goal again. When he gets the ball back from Martial, the last goal he scored Villa.
Yeah.
He taps it with his left, and it saves him an extra step. So he taps it, and then 1-2, bang. He taps it with his left and shoots with his right.
Yeah.
Whereas you look at Pogba kind of taps, shuffles, shoots.
And then passes
Just the way that he gets himself aligned so quickly just buys him that time.
I completely agree, because I was kind of made that analogy when you play like Call of Duty or like GoldenEye, where like when the gun goes up, when your aim goes up, some people have to, like myself included, I have to shift to get to like a headshot. But like Greenwood, just like the gun goes up and he's already on the headshot. Like his foot positioning is unreal. I just think he's going to get a rest tonight, just for the sake of, I think he's going to play Palace. I think he's definitely going to play Chelsea. So I think tonight's his arrest, and then play like 3 games in a week after this. So I think
Palace, Chelsea, West Ham, Leicester, right? So all eyes will be on the FA Cup semi.
And I think Fred will come in as well tonight. But I don't see back four changing. It's kind of the hallmark of any great Premier League side is that back four playing 20 games together. You saw Chelsea, United did it, Liverpool does it. But no, yeah, I think those 2 players will change. And prediction? What would you say before?
I think they'll nick it. I think 1-0, 2-1. I'm going to say 2-1, but I think it'll be low scoring.
I'll say 2-0 then. Yeah. All right, perfect. Do you want to take us out, Sean?
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks for watching. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.